All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right, just okay, great. So I hope you all can see my screen, and we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining today's session. First of all, I would like to apologize for not conducting the session yesterday. I'm not sure how many of you here have joined yesterday to see to go through the demo. So first of all, sorry for that. Actually, I was traveling and couldn't. Um, my phone was off, so I couldn't attend the session yesterday. So we'll go ahead and get started today with introduction to HL7. So today's will be the first session for going through HL7. So this training session is divided into three different parts. First part would be understanding about HL7. What is HL7? Why HL7? What are the message types that we have? We will go through the most frequently used industry use cases of HL7. And then the middle part or the second part would be uh, understanding about networking, which is very much essential to transact HL7 messages, right? So HL7 messages are all about sending data from one system to another and exchanging that data between multiple systems. So what networking concepts you have to be aware of? That's what we will go through in the second phase. And in the third phase, we will start with an integration engine where you will be introduced to Mirth Connect, which is an integration engine used to generate HL7 messages or handle HL7 messages and send HL7 messages to multiple parties or multiple source and destination vendors, depending on where the data has to be sent. Okay, so we'll go in depth about Mirth Connect. We'll take a look at, we'll start from zero, of course, and then we will go ahead and slowly increase the level of complexity of what all interfaces you can develop on Mirth Integration Engine. And after that, we'll have one or two sessions at the end where we'll go through what is the current, what are the other standards that we have in healthcare, like FHIR, CCD. I'll give a small intro about these two standards, and then I will also talk about how to prepare for certification if you're planning to get certified in HL7 V2. And then from there on, we can pick it up further uh, about certification, and we'll touch base on few certification related topics, and then we will conclude our training. Okay, so that would be the parts of the training. So today we will go through the introduction of HL7. So we will just begin with the first session. We'll take a look at the basic stuff, what is needed for us to progress more in terms of HL7. Okay, so my name is Dickson, and I have been working in healthcare industry for the past 14 years now. And I worked on various roles as a developer, as an operations lead, as architect, and trainer. Many different roles have been performed, and now I'm teaching online for most of my time. Uh, so I train people on HL7 FHIR and Mirth Connect. And during my career, I have worked on various things like HL7, CCDs, FHIR, IHE standards, and I also worked on various integration engines like Rhapsody, Mirth Connect, Integration Buddy, Connector, Ensemble, a little bit on Iguana, a little bit on um Cloudleaf. But my whole expertise is mainly on Mirth Connect and Integration Buddy. So that's about myself, and then we will jump into uh, what we are going to see today. So by end of today's session, we will see where do we hear this term called HL7 and where does it come into play. We will start with hospital workflow. Then we will see what is HL7, what is an interface where HL7 is used. Then we will talk about why do we need HL7 and how does the name HL7 come into play. And then we will talk about role of HL7 interfaces in today's world. And then we will talk what is an interoperability. And then we will talk about the basic structure, basic HL7 message structure. So that's what we'll take a look at. Few general terms that we need to be aware of before we start with hospital workflow. So these terminologies are frequently used. I use these acronyms throughout the training. So it's better that we get introduced to them and then we'll be familiar with these acronyms down the line. So PM stands for practice management, which is nothing but the front-end application used by receptionist, front-end staff in the hospital to register patients, schedule the appointments, and so on. Okay. And then we have EHR. EHR is the electronic health record system. So this is also an application, but this is primarily used by doctors, nurses, all the clinical staff to maintain the clinical data of the patient. Then you have HIS. HIS is a combined console. It so you can call it as HIS, HMIS, HIMS. So there are various people calling it in various ways. But HIS is all of these stand for Hospital Information System or Hospital Information Management System, and so on. And this application will have all the modules of both PM and EHR. Hence, it is called as a combined console system. And you will also have LIS within HIS as well. So what is LIS? LIS is Lab Information System, which is basically an application used by labs to manage their orders and results. Then there are few other terminologies. ICD stands for International Classification of Diseases. This is a library of codes that we have. Every code represents a unique, every code represents one disease. And these are unique codes to identify each of the diseases that are out there in the world. Then you have CPT, which is current procedural terminology. And even this is a library where you'll have all list of codes that would tell us what kind of treatment has been provided to the patient. Okay, so ICD helps us identifying a disease. CPT helps us identifying what treatment has been provided for a certain disease. Then CCD, HIE, and IHE. These three are these three are usually used in one single context where you talk about document exchange. So CCD stands for Continuity of Care Document. This is basically a document used by hospital providers to exchange patient-related documentation. And then you have HIE and IHE. So these two, HIE is a platform which will help us to exchange these documents. IHE is also a standard which will help us to, or which will tell us how to exchange CCD documents. Okay. So last three are not very important right now at this point of time. We'll take a look at this at the end of the training. But rest of them, especially PMEHR, is something that we will use a lot throughout the training. So let's go through hospital workflow. Many of you may be aware of what hospital workflow is, but this is where all begins, right? So I usually take the trainees through hospital workflow first, so that this will act as a blueprint for us down the line whenever we are looking at any HL7 message structure. There will be many scenarios where we'll be coming back to hospital workflow and talk about what happens in real time to understand how those real time scenarios are converted into HL7 messages behind the scenes, right? So hospital workflow is the core for anything. So we are going to take a look at an outpatient workflow, which is very simple and most of us can relate to. Uh, and we will use the same uh, blueprint down the line for for scenarios like how HL7 messages are generated, which events HL7 messages do represent and all. So whenever a patient visits the hospital, he first will go to the receptionist and say that, hey, you know what, I am here to meet Dr. So and so, right? So then the receptionist would ask the patient whether he's visiting the hospital for the first time or he has been there earlier. Based on his response, his or her response, the hospital staff would go ahead and take an action. They may create a new patient record in their system or update the existing information if something has to be updated and if the patient is already visited the hospital in the past, right? So whatever the data that receptionist captures is called as demographic information. So it will include patient name, date of birth, gender, SSN, marital status, address information, uh, email address, and insurance information, guarantor information, and stuff like that. So any information that is captured during this initial process is called as demographics, and this will be transacted over to EHR. How it is being sent to the EHR, that we will see later. But right now, when the receptionist is punching all of this information in the PM system, which is practice management system, it is traveling or the data is going from practice management to EHR, and EHR is reviewed and viewed by the doctor, who is nothing but the provider. When I say provider, provider is nothing but the doctor. So provider will go ahead and take a look at the patient details or basic details that are necessary whenever patient arrives. So once the patient's demographic information is captured in the PM system, now the receptionist will go ahead and schedule an appointment, right? So they will schedule an appointment and the appointment information will also be sent to the provider. And provider will get a notification that there is an upcoming appointment which he is going to have. Okay, or the doctors, and it again depends on what kind of application you are using on the HR side. Uh, Many different applications are available in the market and they have their own mechanisms of notifying the doctor that there is an appointment that is coming in. Usually they will have an appointment book where they will see on the screen on um, who is the provider, who is the patient who that is going to come in next few minutes. Okay, so once the patient arrives at the doctor's desk, now doctor and patient will be discussing with each other on what they have, what is the problem that the patient has. This scenario of patient discussing with doctor about his problem is called as an encounter. Okay, and you will hear this term encounter a lot. Encounter solely represents a discussion or uh, talking about the problems that the patient has with the doctor. Okay, so appointment is different, encounter is different. Appointment is a mechanism to schedule or book a slot for the patient. Encounter is the actual encounter of the patient with the doctor. Okay, few people use it interchangeably, but they are different. So now the doctor will go ahead and diagnose the patient. He will try to see if he can diagnose the patient just by looking at the symptoms, if possible, which is not possible in most of the cases, right? It's very rare. So usually they go ahead and schedule or may place some lab orders stating that, hey, you know what, go ahead and get this blood test done or urine test done. And patient will go ahead and get the test done and they will come back to the doctor, right? And so doctor will place the order and that order will be sent to the lab. Lab will perform the tests and they will send the results back to the provider. Then the provider will go ahead and take a look at um, the results and then finalize what problem the patient has and prescribe the medicine. And after that, there will be set of charges that will be incurred to the patient for the labs that they have performed, for the provider related services that they have given, and so on. And all the charges will be sent to the receptionist. Receptionist will go ahead and generate a claim and send it to the insurance company, right? So this is what the hospital workflow and looks like, and that's where the patient's outpatient visit concludes, right? And once the patient's outpatient visit is concluded, then uh, patient uh, will be leaving the hospital, and then after that, the claims will be settled. So whatever happens with the claims will happen behind the scene. Patient doesn't need to stay in the hospital or wait in the hospital, even if it is an outpatient or inpatient visit. They can leave, and the claims will be settled by the hospital, between the hospital and the insurance company. Okay, now let us look at the problem in this workflow, right? I told you that the data is flowing from one system to another, but we don't know how. So let us see that. So whenever we are talking about applications, right, we have PM application, we have EHR application, we have lab application and all. Every application that you talk about will have two phases to it, the front end and the back end. The back end is the database, which is actually storing the data. Whatever you see in the application is just a reflection of what you have in the database or representation of what you have in the database. Database is the actual place where you store your information, right? So every application has that. PM application has the database. EHR application will have its own database. LIS application will also have its own database. And the design and architecture of each of these databases will be different. PM system may be capturing patient information, which includes patient first name, last name, date of birth, gender, SSN, and so on. EHR database will also have very similar information indicating patient's first name, last name, date of birth, gender, SSN, and so on. But the design of how PM system is storing in the database will be different than what you see in the electronic health records database. So let me give you a metaphor here. Let's say that we have three different people from three different countries who are trying to communicate with each other. Right? Let's say one person is from US, one person is from India, and the other one is from China. If all these three people have to talk to each other, and I'm talking about a scenario where English is not the common medium of communication, or not everyone knows English, right? So if the US guy has to talk to Indian guy, they have to learn their regional language in order to converse with them. And if the Indian guy has to talk to Chinese guy, then Chinese guy has to go ahead and converse with them. Sorry, Indian guy has to learn Chinese and then have a conversation with the Chinese guy, and vice versa, right? So if it is with one person or one country, or just you have to communicate with some other person from one different geographical location, you can still try and learn. What if your business involves many different people from many different countries? Do we have to end up in learning all the languages, which is very tough, right? So that's how English emerged as a common medium of communication. And today, most of the people understand and talk English, and that is how the entire world is communicating with each other, right? Very similarly, whenever there were these applications had to exchange data, had to talk to each other. So if data present in the PM systems database has to go to EHR database, as you can see here, there needs to be an engineer who can understand both the databases architecture. If they understand one of them, they have to research on the other one so that they can ensure that they are extracting data from this DB and sending the data to this EHR database. So they should be thoroughly be aware of the other database design and architecture as well, which is a very time consuming process, right? So if there is should be one interface between PM to EHR, it will take a lot of time for the engineer to implement that interface, right? Because he has to analyze this DB, analyze this DB, and come up with a plan of how to exchange the data. So there was no common medium of mechanism which can make this process simple. And I'm talking about scenarios back in 1985. Okay, that's where HL7 has come in for the rescue. So back in late 1980s, this HL7 message was introduced to solve the very same problem of exchanging the data. So how did it solve the problem? So it's like, for now, just let us think that it is a language. Only for today's and tomorrow's session, let's address HL7 as a language. It is not a language, by the way. It is a standard. For now, we'll call it as a language until we understand more about HL7, right? So this HL7 message will go ahead and help them to exchange the data the way the English language did, right? So how is it helpful? Now what happens is, now when the PM system has to send the data to EHR, it will uh, convert the data to the HL7 message and send it. Now every entity in the world is supposed to understand HL7 because that is a standard. So electronic health record or the engineer on the EHR side will be able to understand HL7 and he will be able to interpret and write the data to the database. Okay, so now that the PM system has to generate HL7 and send it to the destination, and it doesn't need to worry about how it is being written to the database or whether the other person on the other side is able to interpret that information or not. All of these worries are not there. Why? Because HL7 is supposed to be understood by everyone. And when someone receives data in the form of HL7, they will be able to interpret that information and write the data to the database. So that has brought down the time span that is required to go ahead and implement any interface. Okay, all that an application has to do is generate HL7 message, send it over. For example, this ADT message this registration message that we are talking about, if once the patient is registered, electronic health record needs that information, we will send it in HL7 message format. What if there is a lab interface that is supposed to be implemented? They also need a demographic message. You can just replicate the existing interfaces, send it over to lab, which is very, very quick, right? Because here there is no dependency of analyzing the other database. All that you have to do is send the HL7 message. The lab entity will be able to interpret HL7 message and write it to the database by themselves. Okay, so that's how HL7 has become the common medium of communication between many different healthcare application entities. Okay, so now that we have understood what is HL7 and what is the importance of HL7, let's talk about a term called interface. So we hear this term interface a lot. So what is an interface? An interface is nothing but a bridge that you develop between two different applications. The way we have bridges over rivers and all, which will help us to uh, which will help us to go ahead and move from one corner to the other. In the same way, an interface is nothing but a bridge or a tunnel, which will help the messages to exchange from source system to the destination system. Okay. And HL7 messages are going to operate at the application level. Why and how we'll see that in a bit. That is the reason it doesn't matter which database you are using, whether you are using SQL database, whether you are using flat file database or some other DB, it doesn't matter. HL7 operates at the application level. So the applications will be able to exchange the data in the form of HL7 syntax. Okay, but that happens through an interface. So what is HL7? So HL7 stands for Health Level 7. How the name has come, we will see it in the next slide. But this started back in 1980s, and in 1987 it was first established as a standard medium of communication. And then there is a concept called as open systems interconnection, based on which the name has been concluded. So we'll take a look at that concept in the next slide. So more than 28 countries are using HL7 today. There are, I mean, most of the countries, US was pioneer. US has been using HL7 for a very long time, but other countries are venturing in using HL7 for their digital transactions in their medical space in from the past few years. So countries like all the UAE Emirates that we have, all the India, and all the countries in the Europe, New Zealand, Australia. So it's all over, is there all over the world where people are using HL7 today. So why is the name HL7? So this is interesting, how the name has been coined. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this OSI model. I'll just give a little introduction about this one, but it's a wonderful concept. If you're not aware, I would highly recommend going through this, going through the architecture of OSI model. So OSI is Open Systems Interconnection, which has 7 layers, as you can see on the screen. The topmost 7th layer is called as application layer. And as and when you progress, you have presentation session, and the last layer is the physical layer. Okay. So physical layer is nothing but the layer where your ports get connected, your Ethernet port, your USB port, your HDMI port, and all. Okay. So right now I am presenting the information on my screen. You are able to see it on your screen. How is that happening? Right? It's because internet. But how is the information that I am presenting on my screen is able to uh, show up on your screen? So what's happening behind the scenes? If my screen is that I'm popping up or that I'm showing is application layer, and behind the scenes, whatever I am presenting is being converted into small packets, and it is being sent to my Ethernet cable. Through my Ethernet cable, it is traveling all the way, and all the packets are interpreted on your side. On your side, you will receive that data on your physical layer. And then there will be a reverse interpretation to show it on your application layer. Okay, so that's how we are able to go ahead and see the information. And that is the main purpose of having an OSI layer, OSI model. Okay. So that is very generic, not very much associated with HL7. The only thing that is associated here is HL7 message generation takes place in the application layer, which is the 7th layer. So that is the reason it is called as health level 7. So level 7 is nothing but the 7th level, and H is nothing but health, right? So that's how the name has been coined as HL7. They wanted it to be unique and appealing. That's how HL7 has come into play. So if you talk about HL7 as a language for a while, like any other language, HL7 message has its own grammatical syntax, which will help us to read through the HL7 message. The way we have full stop, comma, and all in our regular language, in the same way, HL7 has its own grammar and syntax. HL7 version 2.3 is the most famous one that is out there. Even today, many people use HL7 2.3, and it has 12 chapters and 5 appendices. We will take a look at these chapters and all at the end of the session, or at the end of the training when we get to the certification. I will talk more about what all chapters we have. Then it has more than 50 data types. more than 80 message types and more than 86 event types. We are not very familiar with these terms. What is data type? What is message type? What is event type? So don't worry, we'll take a look at that later down the line. Now, when we talk about the history of HL7, right? So in earlier slides, we saw that it started back in 1987, but later there were several other versions of HL7 that was released. So 2.3 is an approved standard that was released in 1997. And then subsequently, there was another release of 2.3.1 with improvements from 2.3. Then a significant change has come when version 3 was released. So there were a series of releases between 2097 and 2005. But in 2005, version 3 was released. So when version 3 was released, initially it was appealing, but later down the line, what happened is it was not very much welcomed by the industry. And why it is not very much welcomed by the industry? That's one big question many people will have. One of the reasons is they have changed the entire structure of the HL7 message. So in version 3, you are not seeing the traditional structure anymore. You are seeing a different XML related architecture or design, which is completely different from the current model of version 2. So that is one reason which made it difficult to get the talent who can go ahead and implement interfaces using V3, version 3. That's primary. Secondly, and which is most important is what I feel, is adding value. So when someone is migrating or moving from version 2 to version 3, and if it is not adding any significant value in terms of revenue or in terms of benefits, then why would someone move? Let's say you're working, or you're using certain app in your mobile. You will upgrade its version in case if there is availability of the version, and you see that really there is an advantage in upgrading, right? So when people are moving from version 2 to version 3, there is no significant value that is being added. It's, let's say, in terms of patient registration data exchange. It's one and the same in version 2, version 3. Functionality wise, you are sending the data there, you are sending the data here using this version as well. It's no different. So as there was no significant value addition, people did not go ahead and use version 3 much. Okay. So that is the reason version 3 was not very much welcomed by the industry. And later there was another version of HL7 that was released, HL7 version 2, which is 2.8.2. And then came Fire. So Fire started in 2010. Many people ask me, is that HL7 version or will it replace HL7? Why do we need Fire and all? Fire is the latest standard of HL7, like the way we have HL7 version 2, HL7 version 3, CCD. Fire is also one of the standards. So Fire is designed to go ahead and um usually make the data available to the outside entities. Now, when you talk about HL7 version 2, the message transactions that happens will happen within the hospital or within the medical entities, hospitals, labs, insurance payers, and pharmacies, and so on. But in order for the data to be available to patient, there has to be a mechanism which will tell you how to go ahead and exchange that data between an outside entity like patient and the hospital. As it is medical data, not every hospital will be ready to expose their data to the outside world. So that's where Fire has come into play. Fire will give a standard mechanism to exchange the data with the outside world. Okay. So in those terms, Fire is a little different on what it's going to do. Uh, and the main purpose of uh, Fire is little different from what HL7v2 does. Okay. But Fire has plans to replace HL7v2. They have mechanisms or paradigms. but that will take a very, very long time, right? Replacing a 30-year standard, 35-year standard, just like that is not possible, right? So fire is still evolving. Another thing is fire is not completely matured yet. There are a lot of changes that are happening over a period of time. So fire to become a standard where we say that, okay, this is standard and things may not change in the standard, that will take little more time. So until then, Fire and HL7 V2 will coexist for a very long time, at least for next 5 to 7 years, if I'm not wrong. So learning HL7 V2 is essential if you want to go ahead and work in the healthcare integration space today. So what are the advantages of HL7? You can share the medical data, demographic information. You can transfer the messages, data in the form of messages. No special tools are required. Unless you have unless you need to go ahead and generate few things from scratch. You will just need one integration engine to generate the messages, but apart from that, special tools are not required. Code is human readable, meaning whenever you look at HL7 message, even if you don't understand the structure, even if you don't know the data or anything, uh, you will still be able to figure out some information from that message, right? How? All that you have to do is just take a look at the data in a deeper manner. You will be able to see name, date of birth, gender, and few other data elements, address, phone number, and so on. Okay, so it is human readable. Even if you don't understand, you will be able to see it, read it. It can work on any OS because it purely depends on the application layer, which is nothing but the OSA layers. So it is not dependent on any operating system. Then what it helps in? So it helps in sharing of medical data. And why do we need this standard? First of all, why do we need HL7 standard? These standards will help us to share the data and help us in quicker insurance claims payments or claim cycles to be completed. And it will help the applications to talk to each other without any human intervention, which will avoid a lot of human errors that we may make. And then you have greater safety and quality that will be managed and maintained through these HL7 interfaces. Okay, now let us take a look at how HL7 messaging works, or how HL7 messaging trigger works. HL7 is basically written on a principle called as trigger event. We'll be exploring more about trigger event tomorrow, but just to introduce you to this concept of trigger event. Whenever a patient is registered, the receptionist will go ahead and save the data in the application, right? So once the data is saved, that concludes an event. Okay. And as soon as that event is concluded, any information related to that event should be sent from that source system to the destination system. Let's say patient is getting registered. Patient information should go from PM to EHR. Okay. So if such requirements are there where the data has to be sent from one system to another, they are called as trigger events. Okay, so trigger event is nothing but an event that is happening in the real world. And that event, if it is demanding the data to be sent from one system to another, such event is called as trigger event. Good examples are patient getting registered, doctor placing a lab order in the application. Okay, so these kind of things are called as trigger events. So if you look at the hospital's design or architecture, or if you go back to the workflow of the hospital, we know that we have patient registration, we have appointment scheduling. These are various events that can happen in real-time world. We have labs, we have charges, we have insurances, right? All of these will generate various kinds of events. Registration itself will have many events like patient getting registered, getting discharged, getting transferred to a different place, right? Similarly, um, other sections of workflows as well will have lot of events that are happening in real world. So we'll see few of them tomorrow. But with in today's session, we just need to have an intro to that. Now let us take a look at the structure of an HL7 message. So first let's take one small example. And before we look into that, any questions from anyone so far? All right, I'm not hearing anything. So let us continue. So let's look at anatomy of an HL7 message. So let's say we have uh, a rack in a house, right? And let's say that there are three shelves in the rack. First shelf is dedicated for putting the clothes. Second one is for books, and third one is for some other alternative books. Right. Now let's suppose that there are few people in the house, 4 or 5 different people, and one of them is going on a tour and he realizes that he forgot his t-shirt in the house. Now he calls another person who is at the home and says that, hey, can you get me the t-shirt? The second person will go ahead and access the rack, open the first shelf, and it is divided into different compartments. So he will go to the first compartment, get the t-shirt, and will give it to the other guy who has left the home already. Now, when you observe the communication between these two people, they did not talk explicitly where the t-shirt is, right? They just said, can you get me the t-shirt? And he went and accessed the rack and got the t-shirt. Now, how is he able to do that? Because the structure that you are seeing is common structure and everyone at home is aware of this, right? In a very similar way, when you talk about an HL7 message structure, everyone who understands HL7 message knows where the data is. Okay, HL7 message also represents a rack. It will have shelves and every shelf is divided into compartments and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual structure. So if you look at an HL7 message, it has segments. Segments are divided into fields. Fields are divided into components. Components are divided into subcomponents. Okay. If you are unable to relate to the previous example, now let us see how that gets related. So any HL7 message, if we consider that as a rack, it will have message which is nothing but the name of the rack. And then shelves can be compared to segments. Segments can be divided into fields, which are nothing but the compartments. And then fields are divided into subcomponents if needed. Okay, so we don't need to worry much about subcomponents right now. We will see them down the line with an example when we arrive at that point. But most importantly, we need to be understanding that a message will comprise of segments. Segments are again divided into fields. Fields may be divided into components. Okay. Now, before we look at the actual HL7 message, there are few grammatical syntaxes that we need to be aware of. So even before you start reading an English book, you should be aware of what all grammatical syntaxes that we have, right? You should know what is full stop, what is comma, and so on. Similarly, for an HL7 message, in order for us to read that, we should be aware of what all uh, syntaxes that we have, right? So let us take a look at that. So these are message delimiters, what you're seeing on the screen right now. And these delimiters will help us to go ahead and structure our HL7 message. So the first one that you're seeing here is called a segment terminator. At the end of every HL7 message segment, you will have this as a full stop. Okay. And then next you have field separator. So field separator is nothing but a pipe. This symbol is called as pipe. This will help you to separate one field from another in a segment. Then you have component separator, which is nothing but a cap symbol or a caret symbol, you can say. So this is used to separate two components within a field. Okay. Rest we will see as and when we progress with the examples. But first we need to be aware of these two most importantly. Okay. Now let us look at an HL7 message. So if you look at this HL7 message, you can see that we have various segments. So there are 5 segments here altogether, right? So let me paste this in a notepad so that we can have a little bit better view. All right. Okay. So as you can see here, this is our HL7 message. And this HL7 message has 5 segments. Each segment is beginning with a 3-letter acronym. And it has its own full form, and that will tell us what kind of data will be present in that segment. For example, if you talk about PID here, PID stands for patient identification. Okay, and it will tell you what is the identifying information for that patient. It will include their name, date of birth, gender, SSN, address, email address, and so on. Okay, so every HL7 message will be broken down like this into segments, and every segment will have its own name in the form of an acronym. And within that, every segment is again divided into fields. You can see that this is field number 1, field number 2, field number 3, and so on. Okay, so that's how you go ahead and understand how to read through HL7 message. Okay, so MSH stands for message segment header, EVN stands for event segment, NK1 stands for next of kin, and P1 stands for patient visit. Okay, each of them will have their own data elements present in their respective segments. Okay. So with this, we'll halt our today's session. In tomorrow's session, we will see how to go ahead and read an HL7 message or write mechanism of how to read the message. So we'll see those, and then we will continue with the rest of the topics which are left for, which are dedicated for session 2. Okay. So any questions from anyone? No questions?
Hi,
Hey, Teja.
I have a question.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So, you said about the certification, right? And is that certification just given? Is it something like given by the organization which started the HL7, or how that goes?
Yes. So certification is awarded by HL7 India, HL7 International. Okay. So you can go ahead and apply for it. And once you apply for it, if you are meeting the criteria, they will allow you to go ahead and write the exam.
How much time would it take for to attend that exam or to
You mean
prepare
for the
for that?
preparation?
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
preparation.
Yeah, usually at least 45 days to 60 days of thorough preparation is necessary.
Okay. And directly after the 45 days and 60 days, there would be an exam directly or
I mean, it's
anything
up to
else?
you how you want to schedule. So once you feel that you are prepared, you can go ahead and go to HL7 website, create a LinkedIn profile there. Sorry, create your HL7 profile there. And once that is done, you can go ahead and schedule your exam through your profile. Okay, and it's a
Okay.
proctor based test, so you can write it from home. And if you are cleared or not, you will get to know within 15-20 minutes or half an hour.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Hi Dixon.
Hey, Sai, hi.
Yeah, tomorrow is a demo class or the actual class starts?
Uh, Two sessions are a demo session, so you can attend tomorrow as well. But in order to continue with the
Okay.
third session, you will
Okay.
need to enroll in the program.
Okay. What is the starting date for course? Like,
Sorry, what is the starting?
what is the starting date for the course start date?
Today itself. So we'll continue, keep continuing with sessions. This week we'll have 3 sessions.
Okay.
From next week we'll have 5 sessions weekly.
Okay, daily same time, like
Yes,
7:30.
same time. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dixon.
Yep, no problem. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So we will connect tomorrow morning and continue taking a look at the HL7 message structure. We will see how to read through an HL7 message tomorrow more essentially. Okay, so today we just saw the structure at a high level. Tomorrow we'll take a deeper look and we'll also talk about what are the various commonly used message types in HL7 and how are they used. We'll talk about those things as well. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
You
you.
all have a good day. We'll catch up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.